1 minute ago, the unthinkable happened. In a move that has stunned palace insiders and shattered royal tradition, King Charles III signed a transfer no monarch before him has dared attempt bypassing heirs, defying protocol and placing immense royal power directly into the hands of his grandchildren. No warning, no precedent, no consultation. And now, the question echoing through palace corridors is chilling. What forced the king to break the crown's most sacred rule? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The estate at the center of this storm is no ceremonial relic gathering dust in royal archives. It is a fortress of influence, a financial engine, a symbol woven into the monarchy's very survival. For generations, such power flowed in a strict line from sovereign to direct heir, an unbroken chain designed to prevent instability and preserve order. To skip that chain is not merely unconventional, it is seismic. It sends a message that tradition, once treated as untouchable, is now negotiable. And within that negotiation lies either extraordinary foresight or quiet desperation. Senior advisors were reportedly blindsided. No formal council debate, no orchestrated announcement, no gradual preparation of public expectation. The decision was executed with startling precision and startling secrecy, signed in private chambers under circumstances described as tense and urgent. Those present have remained tight-lipped, yet their silence carries weight. When the monarchy moves without ceremony, it usually signals that something deeper is unfolding beneath the polished surface. Almost immediately, the ripple effects became impossible to ignore. The heirs' silence was noted. Senior figures adjusted their tone in public appearances. Private offices began recalculating narratives, because this was not just an estate transfer, it was a recalibration of trust. And trust within a royal framework is currency more valuable than land or titles. By placing such immense responsibility directly into the hands of his grandchildren, the king signaled a shift that feels deliberate, strategic, and deeply personal. Whispers have already begun to circulate that this act was not driven by indulgence or affection alone. Some believe it was protection, an attempt to secure the future generation against unseen vulnerabilities. Others suggest it reflects a deeper internal reassessment of loyalty and legacy. When a monarch bypasses his immediate successor, even symbolically, it invites speculation about confidence, about preparation, about the invisible pressures shaping decisions at the highest level. What makes this moment so explosive is not simply that a rule was broken, but that it was broken so decisively. There was no gradual erosion of tradition. There was no public debate to soften the blow. There was only a signature final, binding, and irreversible. In that single stroke of ink, centuries of predictable succession were disrupted, replaced by something far more uncertain. And uncertainty, within the monarchy, is both dangerous and transformative. Because when a king chooses to redefine the pathway of power, he is not just thinking about today, he is thinking about tomorrow, about control, about stability in an era where stability feels increasingly fragile. And as the shock settles and speculation intensifies, one truth becomes clear: this was not an impulsive act. It was calculated, it was intentional, and it was personal. But this decision did not emerge in isolation. It was the culmination of weeks of mounting tension, sealed behind doors the public was never meant to see. Long before the ink touched parchment, a series of unlisted meetings took place inside Buckingham Palace. Invitations were discreet, attendance was selective, and one powerful figure was conspicuously absent. Palace sources now suggest that what transpired in those dimly lit discussions laid the groundwork for a constitutional gamble that could redefine royal succession forever. In the days leading up to the transfer, financial advisors were quietly recalculating estate structures with unusual urgency. Documents were reviewed, revised, and reviewed again, not for minor adjustments, but for structural transformation. This was not routine estate planning. It was architectural redesign. Figures were shifted across generational lines, protections reinforced, contingencies drafted, as though preparing for turbulence no one dared name publicly. The language circulating within those walls was deliberate and coded, Yet the implication was unmistakable. The old pathway was being reconsidered. Legal experts were summoned under confidentiality agreements tighter than usual. The phrase, intergenerational bypass clauses, surfaced repeatedly in private consultations, a technical term carrying explosive consequences. For centuries, the Crown has relied on predictability, on the assurance that inheritance flows in a straight, visible line. To reroute that flow requires not only legal precision, but constitutional courage. And courage, within royal systems, often signals that the stakes are far higher than they appear. Perhaps most striking was the reported absence of full transparency with the heirs' office. While no direct confrontation has surfaced, insiders hint that key details were withheld until the framework was nearly complete. That silence was not accidental. It suggests a calculation, a belief that too many voices might stall what one man had already resolved internally. When trust narrows in royal circles, it is rarely random. It is strategic. And strategy, why, implies anticipation of resistance. Concerns about the monarchy's future stability were raised in subdued but unmistakable terms. Public confidence fluctuates. Generational expectations shift. The institution faces pressures unlike those of previous eras. Within those private meetings, the discussion reportedly moved beyond wealth and toward endurance. How does a centuries-old system secure relevance in an unpredictable world? How does it protect its youngest members from storms that may intensify over time? These were not theoretical questions. They carried emotional weight, because beneath the legal drafts and financial spreadsheets lay something far more human, an aging monarch reflecting not just as sovereign, but as grandfather. Sources describe an emotional undertone that surprised even seasoned advisors. This was not framed as favoritism. It was framed as foresight, a desire to build insulation around the next generation before external forces could test them. In that light, the estate was less a reward and more a shield. Yet shields imply perceived threat, and perceived threats within a monarchy hint at fractures either present or anticipated. The secrecy of the meetings suggests that the king understood the magnitude of what he was preparing to do. He knew tradition would resist. He knew questions would erupt. Still, he moved forward, not impulsively, not recklessly, but with the steady resolve of someone who believes history may judge him not by caution, but by boldness. And as those confidential discussions concluded and the final documents took shape, one realization crystallized among those involved. This was not simply administrative reform. It was a pivot, a deliberate shift in how legacy would be protected, and at the heart of this strategic pivot lies a royal estate whose history makes the decision even more explosive. This was no ordinary inheritance. The estate, linked to generations of monarchs and deeply entwined with national identity, has long symbolized continuity of the crown. To transfer it directly to grandchildren was to interrupt a living chain stretching back centuries. Its halls have witnessed coronations, private reconciliations, and royal crises. And now, it stands as the epicenter of a royal gamble that could reshape the monarchy's future. For generations, this estate followed a sacred rhythm, sovereign to heir, heir to sovereign. An unbroken passage that reinforced stability and projected certainty to the nation. It was more than land and title. It was proof that the monarchy moved forward, without fracture. Each transfer carried symbolism carefully choreographed to reassure the public that nothing fundamental had changed. Continuity was the crown's greatest defense. Predictability was its shield. And now, with one unprecedented decision, that rhythm has been disrupted. The estate's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Its location alone has historically granted influence that extends far beyond ceremonial value. It anchors alliances, hosts critical discussions, and signals authority without a single public declaration. Whoever controls it holds not just property, but positioning. And positioning within a monarchy shapes perception, power, and future leverage. By redirecting this estate to the youngest generation, the king has not simply altered inheritance, he has redirected influence. The emotional weight tied to this property runs even deeper. It carries the imprint of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, of decades defined by discipline, endurance, and unwavering adherence to duty. For many within the royal circle, the estate symbolizes her philosophy of stability above all else. To alter its pathway now feels both bold and haunting. It suggests that the present monarch is willing to reinterpret legacy rather than merely preserve it. That willingness alone sends shockwaves through traditionalist circles. At its core, this estate has always functioned as a bridge between past and future. Each monarch inherited it not only as a possession, but as a promise to protect what was built and pass it forward intact. By placing it directly into the hands of his grandchildren, the king has reframed that promise. He appears to be betting not on established authority, but on renewal, on youth, on an era yet to unfold. It signals a monarchy that may be preparing to lean into generational transition faster than expected. Yet such a shift does not occur without internal recalibration. When long-standing traditions are set aside, it invites questions about confidence, alignment, and evolving priorities within the family itself. Is this a strategic empowerment of the next generation, or a quiet commentary on present dynamics? The move has ignited speculation that deeper adjustments are underway, adjustments not yet visible to the public, but palpable within private corridors. Because estates like this do not merely change hands, they redefine hierarchy. They reveal where trust is placed. They expose where foresight is directed. And when that foresight leaps beyond the immediate successor, it challenges assumptions that have governed royal continuity for centuries. The king's decision feels less like a symbolic gesture and more like a declaration that the future will not wait its turn. And as observers attempt to interpret this extraordinary pivot, one question grows louder, sharper, impossible to ignore. But why bypass the next in line unless the king saw something the rest of the world did not? When tradition bends, the heir feels the tremor first. Since the announcement, Prince William has remained publicly composed, but insiders describe an atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Was this a vote of confidence in the future generation, or a subtle message about the present one? In royal circles, silence is rarely accidental. There was no immediate statement, no carefully measured endorsement, no visible alignment of language to reassure observers that all was harmonious behind the palace gates. Instead, there was restraint. And restraint, in a family built on symbolism, speaks loudly. Advisors close to the heir reportedly moved quickly, not to challenge the decision, but to interpret it. What does it mean when a reigning monarch shifts a pillar of legacy past his direct successor? Is it acceleration or avoidance? Within private offices, conversations intensified. The transfer signaled more than a legal adjustment. It suggested a rebalancing of authority, subtle yet undeniable. For centuries, the heir has been the bridge between reigning monarch and future sovereign. That bridge now appears to have been partially rerouted, not removed, not diminished publicly, but adjusted in a way that shifts emotional gravity toward the youngest members of the royal line. The father-son dynamic at the center of this story is layered, shaped by decades of preparation, expectation, and silent endurance. Prince William has spent his life training for inevitability, for responsibility, for inheritance. To see one of the monarchy's most symbolic estates leapfrog his position invites questions that cannot be easily dismissed. This is not about wealth. It is about trust. It is about timing. It is about whether the king's gesture reflects strategic empowerment or guarded reservation. Public perception management began almost immediately, carefully calibrated appearances, subtle gestures of unity, coordinated messaging, emphasizing continuity and shared purpose. Yet beneath those polished surfaces lies an emotional complexity that cannot be smoothed over with ceremony. Because when generational authority shifts prematurely, even slightly, it forces recalibration of roles that once felt immovable. Some insiders suggest the king's decision was not meant as a slight, but as insulation, a way of protecting his grandchildren while they are still distant from the pressures of leadership. Others interpret it as a declaration that the future must be anchored earlier, before external forces can destabilize it. In either case, the heir finds himself navigating a delicate balance, honoring his father's authority while absorbing the subtle implications of being bypassed in a moment of profound symbolism. And then there are the grandchildren themselves. Suddenly, without direct action of their own, they have been elevated from protected observers to pivotal figures in the monarchy's evolving structure. Their names now circulate in conversations once reserved for senior royals. Their future feels closer, heavier, more immediate. This decision has drawn a line from the present sovereign straight to the next generation beyond the heir, compressing time in a way that feels intentional. In royal history, moves like this rarely stand alone. They foreshadow broader recalibrations. They hint at strategies not yet fully revealed. And as Prince William maintains composure, absorbing both loyalty and uncertainty, the emotional undercurrent grows stronger, because when silence lingers too long, it begins to ask questions on its own. And those grandchildren, still young, still shielded, now find themselves at the center of a royal earthquake. They were meant to grow quietly into their roles. Instead, overnight, they became direct custodians of one of the monarchy's most powerful estates. For Prince George of Wales, Princess Charlotte of Wales, and Prince Louis of Wales, the future has accelerated without warning. And insiders whisper, this wasn't merely inheritance, it was insulation. What makes this moment so extraordinary is not simply the transfer itself, but the structure surrounding it. The estate has reportedly been secured within a carefully designed trust, one that positions the grandchildren as direct beneficiaries while shielding the asset from external turbulence. This is not a casual gesture of affection. It is architecture. It is strategy. It suggests that the king is thinking decades ahead, envisioning a monarchy that may face storms far more complex than those of the past. In royal history, youth has often been protected through distance. Responsibilities are introduced gradually, authority bestowed step by measured step. But here, the timeline appears compressed. By anchoring such a significant estate to the youngest generation, the king has effectively drawn a protective circle around them, financially, symbolically, and politically. It signals belief. It signals confidence. And perhaps most of all, it signals urgency. Those close to the sovereign describe a deeply personal dimension behind the decision. Beyond constitutional calculation lies a grandfather's instinct. The bond between monarch and grandchildren is said to have intensified in recent years, shaped by reflection and an awareness of time's relentless march. Where tradition demands patience, emotion sometimes demands action. And in this case, emotion appears to have intertwined with strategy, in a way that feels both tender and formidable. There is also the undeniable pressure of public scrutiny. The younger royals are growing up in an era of relentless exposure, digital magnification, and shifting public expectations. Insiders suggest that insulating them early, fortifying their future before it becomes vulnerable, was central to the king's thinking. By securing their position now, he may believe he is buying them something invaluable: stability in a world that rarely offers it freely. Yet with protection comes weight. The emotional gravity of legacy does not disappear simply because its holders are young. It settles quietly, shaping futures long before those futures are fully understood. To inherit such significance at an early stage is both an honor and a burden. It defines trajectory, it frames identity, and it quietly declares that the monarchy's future may rest more heavily on their shoulders than previously imagined. Observers are already interpreting this as long-term positioning, a subtle but deliberate shift toward a youth-centered monarchy, one that begins building its foundation earlier rather than later. It suggests preparation for unpredictability, a recognition that the institution must adapt proactively rather than react defensively. In placing such trust in his grandchildren, the king has signaled that he views them not as distant successors, but as central pillars in the years to come. But bold decisions rarely travel unchallenged. For every protective motive, there is a counter-argument rooted in tradition. For every forward-looking strategy, there is a voice defending the old order. The monarchy thrives on continuity, and continuity does not easily surrender its rules. As whispers grow louder and interpretations multiply, one truth becomes increasingly clear. This act has not only empowered the youngest generation, it has unsettled the established one. Yet this bold act did not unfold without resistance. Because tradition rarely yields quietly, royal succession operates on order, not impulse. So when a reigning monarch disrupts that order, it is not just personal, it is constitutional. Legal scholars are already debating the ramifications of the king's decision. Was this a masterstroke of modernization, or a destabilizing gamble that risks fracturing the very institution he vowed to protect? There is virtually no historical precedent for a move of this magnitude. Monarchs have adjusted titles, restructured patronages, even reshaped public roles, but to redirect a cornerstone estate past the immediate airstrikes at the choreography that has defined royal continuity for centuries. The monarchy survives because it appears steady, predictable, almost immune to sudden shifts. By stepping outside that framework, the king has done something audacious. He has introduced unpredictability into a system that depends on ritual. To validate the transfer, intricate legal adjustments were required. This was not a simple declaration. It demanded recalibration of long-standing estate instruments, careful navigation of constitutional boundaries, and airtight drafting to prevent future contestation. Every clause had to anticipate scrutiny. Every signature had to withstand potential challenge. The legal engineering alone signals that this was no emotional whim. It was a deliberate, high-stakes maneuver constructed to endure. Yet, within advisory circles, unity has not been absolute. Some view the move as visionary, an acknowledgement that institutions must evolve or risk irrelevance. They argue that positioning the younger generation early reflects foresight, not rebellion. Others warn that bypassing established succession norms, even symbolically, could invite instability in future transitions. Once a tradition is broken, it becomes easier to break again. And that possibility unsettles purists who believe continuity is sacred. Public reaction has been equally divided. For some, the gesture feels refreshing, a sign that the monarchy is willing to adapt, to prioritize youth, to think boldly rather than cling to inherited patterns. For others, it feels disruptive, even unnecessary. The crown, they argue, is strongest when it adheres to its own rules. In that divide lies the true tension: modernization versus preservation, evolution versus orthodoxy. What cannot be ignored is that this decision suggests pressure. Institutions rarely shift so dramatically unless external forces demand recalibration. Public expectations are changing. Generational dynamics within the royal family are shifting. Global scrutiny intensifies with each passing year. By acting now, the king may be signaling that waiting is no longer a luxury the monarchy can afford. Proactive adaptation may feel safer than reactive correction. But with adaptation comes consequence. If this estate can bypass one heir, what prevents future redistributions from following similar logic? Does this mark the beginning of a broader restructuring of royal assets, or is it a singular exception shaped by unique circumstances? The questions multiply, and each one chips gently at the once solid facade of predictability. And perhaps that is the most dramatic element of all. The king has not merely altered a document, he has tested the elasticity of the crown itself. He has measured how far tradition can stretch before it strains. Whether history will view this as courageous leadership or risky defiance remains uncertain. What is certain is that the monarchy now stands at a crossroads it did not publicly anticipate. And as debate intensifies, attention shifts to what may have pushed the king to act so decisively and so urgently. Sources close to the palace describe recent weeks as emotionally charged. Behind ceremonial smiles, private conversations reportedly grew more intense. Concerns about legacy, stability, loyalty, and time. Some insiders suggest the king has been reflecting deeply on what kind of monarchy he will leave behind and who he truly trusts to carry it forward. Beneath the polished rhythm of public engagements, a quieter dialogue was unfolding. Legacy planning, once treated as a distant administrative matter, moved urgently to the foreground. Discussions that were previously theoretical became personal. What does continuity truly mean in an era that questions institutions more openly than ever? How does a sovereign secure relevance without appearing desperate to modernize? These were not abstract musings. They were heavy considerations, pressing against the final chapters of a long public life. The transition from heir to monarch reshapes a man. It compresses decades of waiting into immediate accountability. Those close to the king suggest that this shift has triggered deeper introspection than many anticipated. Reflection on past sacrifices. Reflection on family fractures. Reflection on moments when tradition protected the crown and moments when it perhaps constrained it. That emotional inventory appears to have intensified recently, shaping decisions that feel both strategic and deeply personal. Anxiety about public confidence has not gone unnoticed within palace walls. Approval rises and falls. Headlines oscillate between admiration and scrutiny. The monarchy survives not solely on ceremony, but on belief, and belief is fragile. Insiders hint that the king has grown increasingly aware that the institution must project strength without rigidity, compassion without weakness. That delicate balance requires foresight and sometimes bold recalibration. Strategic conversations reportedly expanded beyond immediate succession and intergenerational safeguarding. The question was not merely who inherits next, but who endures longest. By shifting focus toward the youngest royals, the king may be attempting to fortify the crown decades in advance. It is a move that suggests long-term thinking rather than short-term optics. And long-term thinking often demands uncomfortable disruption. Yet strategy alone does not explain the emotional undertone that has accompanied this decision. Observers close to the family speak of moments that felt less constitutional and more intimate. A grandfather weighing not just duty, but affection. A sovereign aware that time cannot be negotiated. That awareness carries urgency. It compresses patience. It transforms contemplation into action. There is also the subtle tension of loyalty. Trust within royal structures is layered, influenced by history, personality, and evolving alliances. When the king chose to redirect such a significant estate, he was not only adjusting paperwork, he was expressing confidence in a particular vision of the future. That expression inevitably reshapes relationships. It redefines perceived alignment. It introduces questions that may not be voiced publicly, but are certainly felt privately. Urgency seems to have been the silent catalyst. Not panic, but acceleration, a sense that waiting might complicate matters further, that acting now, decisively, would secure stability rather than invite uncertainty. In this light, the estate transfer appears less like a surprise and more like a culmination of reflection, of pressure, of emotional reckoning. But perhaps the most profound consequence of this transfer is not financial, it is symbolic. History rarely announces itself in advance. Yet in a single signature, the king may have quietly rewritten the monarchy's unwritten code. By elevating his grandchildren above rigid convention, he has signaled a shift from hierarchy to legacy, from protocol to preservation. The world is watching closely because this may not be a single decision, but the first move in a far larger transformation. What began as a confidential transfer has now evolved into something far more symbolic. The act signals generational prioritization in a way that cannot be dismissed as accidental. For centuries, the monarchy has functioned like a careful, lie-aligned staircase, each step taken in strict order. Now, that staircase appears subtly restructured. The youngest generation has not replaced the next in line, but they have been elevated earlier than tradition would normally allow. And that elevation carries meaning. By positioning his grandchildren at the center of such a consequential decision, the king has effectively cast them as symbolic anchors of the future reign. They are no longer distant heirs, waiting in quiet preparation. They have become living emblems of continuity and renewal. This is not about crowns or ceremonies. It is about narrative. It is about projecting stability decades in advance. And in doing so, the king has shifted the emotional gravity of the monarchy toward youth, resilience, and longevity. Authority within royal structures is rarely declared outright. It is signaled through gestures, privileges, and proximity to power. This estate transfer reframes that distribution in subtle but profound ways. It does not strip authority from the present generation, but it redistributes expectation. It hints that influence may increasingly be shared across layers rather than concentrated solely at the top. That recalibration may be the quiet beginning of a more flexible monarchy, one that adapts rather than rigidly resists change. Observers are already speculating whether this move could inspire additional unprecedented reforms. If one long-standing tradition can be adjusted, what else might follow? Could this signal modernization in estate management, in succession symbolism, even in how royal roles are defined? Once momentum begins, it rarely stops at a single decision. And momentum, when tied to legacy, can reshape institutions faster than many anticipate. The public narrative is shifting accordingly. Conversations no longer revolve only around the present sovereign or the immediate heir. They increasingly center on the next generation, on what they represent, on how they will carry forward an institution that must evolve to endure. This youth-focused framing may be precisely what the king intended, a reminder that the monarchy's survival depends not on clinging to yesterday, but on preparing deliberately for tomorrow. Yet amid the boldness lies vulnerability. Any transformation invites scrutiny. Any departure from custom invites doubt. The king has gambled that foresight will outweigh criticism, that proactive vision will prove stronger than conservative hesitation. Whether history will judge this as strategic brilliance or unnecessary disruption remains uncertain. What is certain is that the monarchy now feels different, slightly reoriented, subtly accelerated, undeniably aware of its own fragility and potential. And so the lingering question grows louder with each passing day. What comes next? If this was the opening chapter of reform, the next pages may hold even greater shifts. If it was a singular protective act, it still leaves a permanent mark on how power and trust are perceived within the royal family. Either way, the message has been delivered with clarity. Legacy is no longer confined to order alone. It is being actively shaped. And as the dust settles, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This was not just an estate transfer, but a message written directly into royal history. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.